President Karen Walsh stood behind the podium in the United Earth Assembly building. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every human colony and settlement. Delegates from Luna City sat next to farmers from the Outer Rim worlds. Military officers in dress uniforms filled entire rows. The president looked older than her 60 years. The past 3 days had been the hardest of her life. She had barely slept since Ambassador Morrison and Admiral Parker returned from Nexus Prime with news of the Council's ultimatum. "Citizens of Earth and all human colonies," President Walsh began, "we face the greatest challenge in our species, history. The Galactic Council has demanded that we surrender our independence. They want us to become their servants." Angry voices rose from the crowd. Some delegates shouted questions. Others demanded action. The president raised her hand for silence. "Let me be clear about what they are asking," she continued. "No more new colonies. Half our military destroyed. Alien observers watching our every move. They call this guidance. I call it slavery." In the front row, Dr. Eric Thompson shifted uncomfortably. He was the head of Earth's Secret Research Division. For 20 years, his team had been working on projects that could change the balance of power in the galaxy, projects that the Galactic Council knew nothing about. "We have spent 3 days discussing our options," the president said. "I have spoken with our military leaders, our scientists, our philosophers, and our historians. The question is simple. Do we surrender our freedom to buy temporary peace, or do we stand up for what we believe is right?" Admiral Parker stood up from her seat. The crowd fell silent as she walked to the podium. She had commanded Earth's space forces through 3 major conflicts. Pirates, raiders, and rogue states had all learned to fear her name. "The Galactic Council thinks we are weak," Admiral Parker said. "They believe that because we are young, we must be helpless. They are wrong." She turned to face the assembly. "I have served in Earth's military for 30 years. I have seen what humans can do when their backs are against the wall. We do not break. We do not surrender. We adapt and overcome." The crowd erupted in cheers. The Admiral waited for quiet before continuing. "The Council fleet has 2,000 ships. They think this makes them invincible. But they are fighting the last war, not the next one. They believe their old technology and ancient tactics will be enough to defeat us." Dr. Thompson nodded slightly. He knew what the Admiral meant. The aliens had superior numbers, but human technology had advanced far beyond what the Council suspected. "If we choose to fight," Admiral Parker continued, "it will not be a fair fight. It will not be honorable. It will be the kind of war that humans have always won, by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than our enemies." President Walsh returned to the podium. "The choice is ours to make. We can accept the Council's terms and live as their subjects. Our children and grandchildren will grow up knowing that humanity chose fear over freedom." She paused and looked out at the hundreds of faces staring back at her. These people represented billions of humans across dozens of worlds. They had come to hear what their leaders had decided about their future. Or we can reject their ultimatum and show them that some species cannot be caged. We can prove that humanity will not bow down to bullies, no matter how powerful they think they are. The president's voice grew stronger. "I have made my decision. With the full support of Earth's government and military, humanity's answer to the Galactic Council is no. We will not surrender. We will not submit. We will remain free." The hall exploded with noise. Delegates jumped to their feet, cheering and applauding. Some were crying. Others were shouting defiant slogans. The sound was so loud that the president had to wait several minutes before she could speak again. Meanwhile, In secret military bases across human space, orders were already going out. Captain Roy Mitchell received his sealed instructions aboard the destroyer HMS Vengeance. He read the mission parameters twice, then smiled grimly. Operation Defiant Stand was beginning. On Titan Base, Colonel Amy Rodriguez gathered her Marine units for a special briefing. The soldiers listened in silence as she explained what was coming. These were not ordinary troops. They were volunteers who had trained for this exact scenario for years. "The aliens think they know how humans fight," Colonel Rodriguez told her. "Troops. They studied our history. They saw our wars against each other. They think we are just another primitive species with crude weapons and simple tactics." She activated a holographic display showing alien ship designs. "They are wrong. We have been preparing for this day since first contact. Every alien ship that visited Earth was scanned. Every piece of technology we could trade for or steal has been studied. We know their weaknesses better than they do." Back in the assembly hall, President Walsh was finishing her speech. "We are not seeking war," she said. "We never wanted this fight. But if the Council insists on treating us as enemies, they will discover what human enemies are truly capable of." The message was transmitted to every human settlement simultaneously. On Mars, colonists gathered in the red dust outside their domed cities to hear their president speak. In the asteroid belt, miners stopped their work to listen. On the frontier worlds at the edge of human space, farmers and settlers cheered as Walsh's words reached them. The official response to the Galactic Council was much shorter than the president's speech. Ambassador Morrison had written it himself, in just 2 sentences. "Humanity respectfully declines the Council's generous offer. We look forward to continued diplomatic relations as equals." When High Chancellor Vextar received the message on his flagship, he read it 3 times. Then he threw the datapad across his command center. "Fools!" he snarled. "They have no idea what they have chosen." His aide, a younger member of the hegemony with only 2 arms instead of 4, picked up the broken device. "Sir, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans have been peaceful for 20 years. Maybe we can find another solution." Vexitar's 4 hands clenched into fists. "Peace? They destroyed the Ravager fleet completely. They have fought 7 wars in 20 years and won them all. This is not a peaceful species. This is a threat that must be eliminated before it grows stronger." The Chancellor activated the fleet communication system. His voice reached every ship in the massive armada waiting at the edge of human space. "All units, this is High Chancellor Vextar. The humans have chosen war. Activate battle protocols. We move into their space in 12 hours. Across the fleet, alien officers began preparing for what they expected to be a short conflict. Intelligence reports suggested that humans had perhaps 200 military ships total. Against the Council's 2,000 vessels, it would be a massacre. But intelligence reports can be wrong. On Earth, Dr. Thompson was already activating systems that the Galactic Council had no idea existed. Hidden installations across human space received coded signals. Weapons platforms that looked like ordinary asteroids began powering up. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers revealed their true nature. Admiral Parker stood in Earth's military command center, watching displays that showed the real strength of humanity's defenses. The aliens were about to learn that humans had spent 20 years preparing for this exact moment. "All units report ready," her communications officer announced. "Good," Admiral Parker replied. "When the Council fleet crosses into human space, They will find out what happens when you corner a species that refuses to be caged. The 72-hour deadline had passed. Humanity had given their answer. Now it was time to see if they could back up their words with action. The galaxy was about to discover what humans had always known about themselves. They were at their most dangerous when someone told them they had no choice. The battle that would change galactic history began with a simple message from Captain Dan Murphy aboard the battlecruiser New York. Council fleet, you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal from human space. This is your final warning. Admiral. Foster looked at his tactical display and saw his worst nightmare. His 2,000 ships were surrounded by human forces that had materialized from nowhere. Weapons platforms hidden in asteroids, stealth ships dropping their camouflage, battle fleets that had disguised themselves as cargo haulers. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we are detecting over 1,500 human vessels, plus approximately 3,000 fixed weapons platforms. Their energy signatures are beyond our previous estimates." Foster's 4 hands gripped his command chair. 20 years of intelligence reports had been wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. The humans were not the weak, primitive species the Council had believed them to be. "All ships," Foster announced on the fleet communication channel, "maintain formation and prepare for battle. We are the combined might of the Galactic Council. We will not be intimidated by human tricks." But even as he spoke the words, Foster could see the doubt in his officers' faces. This did not look like a trick. This looked like a carefully planned military operation, executed with precision that bordered on perfection. The 30 seconds expired. Human weapons opened fire simultaneously across 12 star systems. Energy beams that burned brighter than small stars reached out from hidden platforms and struck Council ships with devastating accuracy. The alien vessels' shields, which had protected them against conventional weapons for centuries, collapsed under the assault. Captain Zekmar watched in horror as his battle carrier Stinger took direct hits from weapons that should not have existed. "Impossible," he clicked through his mandibles. "These are energy outputs that require massive power sources. How do such small platforms generate this much force?" The answer was human innovation. Dr. Eric Thompson's research teams had spent 20 years studying captured alien technology and finding ways to improve it. They had developed power sources that were smaller, more efficient, and more powerful than anything the Council races possessed. But the technology was only part of the story. The real advantage was in how humans thought about warfare. Admiral Lisa Parker watched the battle unfold from Earth's command center. Every human ship and platform was connected through a communications network that allowed them to coordinate their attacks with impossible precision. While Council forces fought as individual units, human forces fought as a single organism. "Target priority Alpha 7 is moving to attack formation," reported Colonel Jack Stevens. "Adjusting fire patterns to compensate." Across the battle zone, thousands of human weapons adjusted their aim in perfect synchronization. The Council ship that had been trying to break out of the trap found itself facing concentrated fire from every direction. Captain Susan Hayes piloted the Wraith's Edge through the chaos of battle, her stealth frigate invisible to enemy sensors. Her mission was not to fight, but to observe and coordinate. From her unique position, she could see how completely the Council fleet was outmatched. "Admiral," she reported to Parker, "enemy forces are attempting to retreat from Sectors 7 through 12. Recommend activating reserve platforms." "Confirmed," Parker replied. "Ghost Protocol is now active. More weapons platforms came online, these ones positioned along the Council fleet's escape routes." What had seemed like a trap was revealed to be something even worse. A perfect ambush that anticipated every possible move the aliens might make. Admiral Foster's flagship Dominion shuddered as human weapons found their mark. His ship was 3 kilometers long and protected by the strongest shields in the hegemony fleet. But the shields were failing under sustained fire from weapons that seemed to punch through energy barriers like they were made of paper. Engineering. "Report," Foster demanded. "Sir, these human weapons are frequency modulated," his chief engineer replied. "They adjust their energy output to match our shield harmonics. Every time our shields adapt, their weapons adapt faster." This was human thinking at its most dangerous. Instead of building bigger weapons, they had built smarter ones. Instead of using brute force, they used precision and adaptability. The Zephyrian crystal ship Harmony rang like a broken bell as human projectiles struck its crystalline hull. Captain Vexcole could not understand what she was seeing. "These kinetic rounds are changing course during flight," she reported to the fleet. "They are following our evasive maneuvers." Even the projectile weapons were intelligent, guided by tiny computers that could think faster than organic brains. Nothing in the Council's experience had prepared them for warfare at this level of sophistication. But the most shocking revelation came when Captain Murphy's battlecruiser New York demonstrated its true capabilities. The ship accelerated to speeds that should have been impossible, its crew protected by gravitational dampening systems that were decades ahead of Council technology. "How are they moving so fast?" Foster asked Ambassador Kell. "Those acceleration rates should kill their crews." Kell studied the sensor readings with growing understanding. "Admiral, I think we underestimated more than their weapons. Their ships, their defenses, their entire military doctrine is more advanced than ours." The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the Council fleet. Humanity had not spent 20 years trying to catch up to galactic civilization. They had spent 20 years surpassing it. Dr. Thompson watched the battle from his research facility on Luna. The weapons and ships performing so brilliantly against the Council fleet were the result of decades of work by thousands of human scientists and engineers. Every alien technology they had encountered had been studied, understood, and improved upon. But the real breakthrough had come from human creativity. Aliens built weapons to fit their existing tactics. Humans built weapons to create new possibilities. They had not just copied Council technology, they had revolutionized it. "Phase 2 is complete," Thompson reported to Admiral Parker. "Enemy fleet cohesion is breaking down. Recommend beginning Phase 3. "Agreed," Parker replied. "All units, begin final approach." The human fleet, which had been fighting at long range, suddenly closed to point-blank distance. Council officers who had trained for centuries in traditional naval combat found themselves facing tactics they had never imagined. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, covering each other's weaknesses and concentrating fire on enemy vulnerabilities. They fought with a level of teamwork that seemed almost telepathic. Captain Hayes observed one particular engagement where 6 human destroyers surrounded a massive Council dreadnought. Instead of trying to match the alien ship's firepower, they attacked from all directions simultaneously. The dreadnought's weapons could only fire at one target at a time, but it faced 6 enemies that moved like they shared a single mind. "This is not how space combat works," muttered one of Hayes's officers as they watched the dreadnought's shields collapse under coordinated fire. "It is now," Hayes replied. Admiral Foster realized that his fleet was not just losing, it was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought unlike anything in galactic history. His ships were designed for the stately battles of previous centuries, where fleets lined up and traded fire until one side retreated. Humans fought like they were hunting prey. Fast, smart, and utterly ruthless. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving messages from across the fleet. Multiple ships are requesting permission to surrender." Foster felt his authority crumbling along with his fleet's formation. In 6 hours of combat, the mighty Council Armada had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships trying desperately to escape human forces that seemed to be everywhere at once. The humans had not just won the battle. They had demonstrated that every assumption the galaxy had made about warfare was wrong, and this was only the beginning. The largest military fleet in galactic history moved through space like a metal storm. 2,000 warships from 4 different alien races traveled together toward human territory. Their combined firepower could destroy entire star systems. Admiral Ben Foster commanded the operation from his flagship, the mighty Dominion. The massive vessel stretched 3 kilometers from bow to stern. Its weapons could crack planets. Its shields could stop anything humans might throw at them. At least that was what the aliens believed. "Distance to the human border?" Foster asked his navigation officer. 6 hours at current speed, sir," the klaxon replied. His insect-like face showed satisfaction. "Long-range sensors detect human ships, but they appear to be retreating." Foster studied the tactical display. Red dots showed Council forces advancing steadily. Blue dots representing human ships were indeed falling back deeper into their own space. It looked exactly like what he had expected, a weaker force trying to buy time by trading space for preparation. "Cowards," muttered Captain Zekmar from his battle carrier Stinger. The klaxon officer commanded a squadron of heavy assault ships. "They run before we even fire a shot." But not everyone shared this confidence. Ambassador Kell of the Tauri observed from the bridge of the flagship. His people had worked with humans for 20 years. He knew them better than the other council members. "Admiral," Kell said quietly, "in my experience, humans do not run from fights. When they retreat, it usually means they are planning something." Foster glanced at the Tauri diplomat. "What could they possibly plan?" "Our intelligence reports show they have less than 300 ships total. We outnumber them 7 to 1. "Intelligence can be wrong," Kell replied, but Foster was already turning back to his displays. The Council fleet pushed deeper into human space, capturing empty outposts and abandoned mining stations. Every human facility they reached had been evacuated. No resistance, no last stands, just empty buildings and vacant orbital platforms. "They are not even trying to defend their outer colonies," reported Captain Vexcol of the Zephyrian crystal ship Harmony. Her crystalline voice rang, like bells through the communication system. "This is too easy." On his own ship, Foster was beginning to feel the same unease that Ambassador Kell had expressed. Human behavior did not match their reputation. These were the same people who had destroyed the Ravager fleet completely rather than accept any surrender. These were the warriors who had never lost a major battle in 20 years of expansion. So why were they running? The answer was hidden throughout human space in the form of thousands of objects that looked like ordinary space debris. Asteroids with unusual metal content, derelict ship hulks floating in the void, sensor buoys disguised as communication satellites. The Council fleet's scanners detected them, cataloged them as harmless, and ignored them. That was their first mistake. Captain Susan Hayes watched the alien armada from her position aboard the stealth frigate Wraith's Edge. Her ship was completely invisible to Council sensors, hidden behind technology that made it look like empty space. She had been tracking the enemy fleet for 3 days. "Contact Admiral Parker," Hayes told her communications officer. "Tell her the fish are in the net." 12 light-years away, Admiral Parker received the message in Earth's military command center. She stood before a massive holographic display that showed the true situation in human space. Every retreating human ship, every hidden weapon platform, every stealth vessel waiting in ambush. "Project Constellation is ready for activation," reported Colonel Jack Stevens, the operations tactical coordinator. "All hidden platforms report green status. Ghost Fleet is in position." Admiral Parker nodded. For 20 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. They had studied every alien ship design they could acquire through trade or espionage. They had analyzed every battle tactic the Council races used. They had built weapons specifically designed to counter alien technology. But most importantly, they had learned to think like humans instead of trying to fight like aliens. "Begin Phase 1, Admiral Parker ordered. "Light them up." Across a dozen star systems, objects that had looked like harmless debris suddenly came to life. Hidden weapons. Platforms revealed themselves as their camouflage fell away. Power signatures that had been masked for years blazed to life on every Council sensor. Admiral Foster stared at his tactical display in shock as thousands of new contacts appeared around his fleet. "Where did these come from?" he demanded. His sensor officer, a young hegemony with trembling hands, studied his instruments. "Sir, these platforms were here all along. They were hidden somehow. Their power signatures are incredible. These are not primitive human weapons." The first barrage came from weapons platforms that Foster's fleet had passed hours earlier. Energy, beams that should not have been able to reach across such distances, struck Council ships with pinpoint accuracy. Shields that had protected alien vessels for centuries collapsed in seconds. "Impossible," whispered Captain Zekmar, as his battle carrier shuddered under impacts from weapons that fired faster and hit harder than anything in Council arsenals. "How do they have this technology?" The answer lay in 20 years of human research and development. Dr. Eric Thompson's teams had not just studied alien technology, they had improved it. Human weapons combined the best features of Council designs with innovations that alien minds had never imagined. Energy weapons that adjusted their frequency to match target shields. Kinetic projectiles that could change course mid-flight. Point. Defense systems that thought faster than organic brains. Every human platform was a masterpiece of engineering designed for one purpose: to destroy Council ships. But the real shock came when the retreating human fleet suddenly reversed course. Ships that had appeared to be running in panic revealed their true nature as they dropped their disguises and opened fire. Captain Dan Murphy of the battlecruiser New York led the counterattack. His ship had been pretending to be a damaged cargo hauler for the past 6 hours. Now it shed its false hull plating and revealed weapons that made Council officers gasp in disbelief. "This is Captain Murphy of the Terran Defense Force," he announced on open channels. "You have entered human space without permission and with hostile intent. Withdraw immediately, or we will destroy you." Admiral Foster looked at his tactical display and felt his confidence crumble. His fleet was surrounded by human forces that had appeared from nowhere. Worse, those forces were equipped with technology that was clearly superior to anything the Council possessed. "How is this possible?" he asked Ambassador Kell. "Our intelligence said they were primitive." Kel was studying the human weapon signatures with growing understanding. "Admiral, I think we made a terrible mistake. We assumed that because humans were new to the galaxy, they must be technologically inferior. We never considered that they might have been learning from us." The truth was worse than Kel realized. Humanity had not just been learning, they had been planning for this exact scenario since first contact. Every diplomatic meeting had been an intelligence gathering mission. Every trade agreement had included technology transfers that humans used to build better weapons. Every act of apparent friendship had been preparation for the day when friendship was no longer possible. Captain Hayes aboard the Wraith's Edge watched Council ships trying to retreat from the trap they had walked into. But human forces were everywhere now. Ships that looked like cargo haulers revealed military-grade weapons. Asteroids that had seemed natural turned out to be fortified gun platforms. Even the space itself seemed hostile as hidden mines activated and began tracking Council vessels. "Ghost Fleet, this is Wraith Leader," Hayes announced. "Begin final approach." From every direction, human ships appeared as their stealth systems shut down. The Council fleet found itself facing not the few hundred ships their intelligence had reported, but over 1,000 vessels equipped with weapons that outclassed anything they had. Admiral Foster realized that his mighty armada was now the one that was outnumbered and outgunned. The humans had not just prepared a defense, they had prepared a perfect trap. And now that trap was closing around 2,000 of the galaxy's most powerful warships, with the efficiency that only humans seemed capable of achieving. The Battle of the Kepler Divide ended not with a great explosion, but with a simple transmission from Admiral Ben Foster's crippled flagship. "Human forces, this is Admiral Foster of the Galactic Council Fleet. We request immediate ceasefire and permission to withdraw from your space." Admiral Lisa Parker received the message in Earth's command center. Around her, officers and technicians watched displays showing the complete destruction of Council fleet cohesion. Of the 2,000 ships that had entered human space, nearly 700 had been destroyed or disabled. The rest were scattered across a dozen systems, many running on emergency power with their crews barely alive. Human casualties were minimal. 12 ships damaged, 3 destroyed. Less than 1,000 dead compared to tens of thousands of Council losses. "Grant their request," Parker ordered. "But make it clear that any Council ship that enters human space again will be treated as hostile." The message was transmitted to every surviving Council vessel. Within hours, the broken remnants of the galaxy's most powerful fleet began limping back toward their own territory. But the real impact of humanity's victory was only beginning. News traveled faster than the retreating ships. Within 3 days, every major world in the galaxy knew what had happened. The species that the Galactic Council had dismissed as primitive newcomers had crushed the combined military might of 4 ancient civilizations. President Karen Walsh stood before a crowd of reporters from dozens of worlds. Behind her, construction. Crews were already beginning work on Unity Station, a massive space facility that would serve as humanity's new diplomatic center. "We did not seek this conflict," Walsh said. Her words broadcast live to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. "We asked only for the right to exist as equals among the stars. When that request was met with demands for our surrender, we chose to defend ourselves." She paused, looking directly into the cameras that carried her image across the galaxy. "The Galactic Council is welcome to continue existing as it has. But it will do so knowing that humanity is not asking for permission to be free. We are taking our rightful place as equals. Any species that approaches us with respect will find generous allies. Those who mistake our desire for peace as weakness have now learned otherwise. The political earthquake that followed Walsh's speech reshaped galactic civilization overnight. On Hegemony Prime, riots broke out as citizens demanded to know how their leaders had led them into such a catastrophic defeat. High Chancellor Vextar, stripped of his authority and facing charges of criminal incompetence, spent his final days in office trying to explain how he had so completely misjudged humanity's capabilities. The Klaxon swarm withdrew from the council entirely, their insectoid leaders declaring that they would never again follow the guidance of beings who understood war so poorly. The Zephyrian Collective began immediate negotiations with Earth, offering trade agreements and technology exchanges in exchange for human protection from other threats. But the most dramatic changes came from smaller species that had lived under Council dominance for centuries. The Rigelian Republic, the Centauri, Alliance, and the Outer Rim Confederacy all sent diplomatic missions to Earth within a month of the battle. They had seen what happened when someone challenged humanity and lost. Ambassador Jake Morrison found his new office in Unity Station flooded with requests for meetings. Species that had barely acknowledged human existence were now eager to establish diplomatic relations. "It's ironic," he told Admiral Parker, as they watched yet another alien delegation arrive at the station. "All the Council had to do was treat us with basic respect. We would have been content to grow slowly, contribute to galactic civilization, maybe even help defend weaker species from threats." Parker nodded, observing construction robots building new docking bays to handle the increased traffic. Instead, they forced us to become exactly what they feared we might be. The economic impact was equally dramatic. Human technology revealed during the battle to be far more advanced than anyone had suspected, became the most sought-after commodity in the galaxy. Trade routes that had existed for millennia shifted to pass through human space. Dr. Eric Thompson, his research no longer secret, found himself leading delegations of alien scientists who wanted to understand how humanity had achieved such rapid technological advancement. "The answer is simple," he told a gathering of researchers from 12 different species. "We never assumed that the old ways were the best ways. When we encountered your technology, we did not just copy it. We asked ourselves how we could make it better." This attitude, the willingness to question, improve, and innovate, was perhaps humanity's greatest advantage. While other species had spent centuries perfecting ancient techniques, humans had spent decades creating entirely new ones. Within a year of the battle, the Terran Federation had grown from 50 colonies to over 100 star systems, not through conquest, but through voluntary association. Dozens of species requested membership or alliance with humanity, seeing them as protectors against the chaos that was spreading as the old council system collapsed. The Galactic Council itself still existed, but as a shadow of its former power. The remaining member species established the Galactic Congress, a new organization with humanity holding a permanent seat on the Security Council alongside the other major powers. Captain Susan Hayes, promoted to Admiral after her performance, in the battle commanded the new Deep Space Exploration Fleet. Human ships pushed further into unknown regions of space than any expedition in galactic history. "What's out there?" a young officer asked her as their fleet prepared to jump beyond the edge of mapped space. "Whatever it is," Hayes replied, "it will learn the same lesson the Council learned. Humanity goes where it chooses to go. We bow to no one, and we protect those who need protection." The message spread with every human ship that departed for distant stars. Humanity had arrived not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as equals demanding respect. 5 years after the Battle of the Kepler Divide, former High Chancellor Vextar sat in exile on a remote world, writing his memoirs. The chapter about humanity's rise was the most difficult to write. "I believed," he wrote, "that a young species must necessarily be a weak species. I thought that because humans had only recently joined galactic civilization, they must be inferior to those of us who had been spacefaring for millennia." He paused. In his writing, staring out at the sunset on a world whose name he could barely pronounce. "I failed to understand that youth can also mean adaptability. That being new to something does not mean being bad at it. Humans had spent 20 years among us, not as students trying to catch up, but as competitors preparing to surpass us." The former chancellor returned to his writing, documenting the greatest military and political disaster in galactic history. "The peace talks failed because we never intended them to succeed. We saw them as an opportunity to formalize humanity's submission to our authority. Instead, they became the catalyst for our own downfall." Meanwhile, in human space, President Walsh prepared for her farewell address. Her term was ending, but her legacy was secure. She had guided humanity through its greatest crisis and emerged victorious. "We stand at the beginning of a new age," she told the assembled delegates. "An age where strength comes not from dominating others, but from helping them become strong themselves. Where diversity is celebrated rather than feared. Where being human means more than just the species we were born as." She looked out at an audience that now included beings from dozens of worlds, humans and aliens working together as equals. "The galaxy tried to cage humanity. Instead, they freed us to become everything we were capable of being. The universe is vast, and there is room in it for all of us. But it will be a universe where respect is earned, not demanded. Where freedom is defended, not surrendered." As her speech ended and delegates from across known space rose to applaud, one truth was clear to everyone present. The age of human expansion had begun, not through conquest or coercion, but through the simple demonstration that some species could not be forced to submit. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity not through fear, but through recognition of what humans had always known about themselves. They were at their best when someone told them something was impossible. The meeting room on Nexus Prime Station felt cold and unwelcoming. Kate Morrison sat at the long metal table, her hands folded in front of her. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 5 years now, but today felt different. Today felt final. Across from her sat Admiral Vexthul of the Zephyrian Empire. His bug-like eyes stared at her with what she could only describe as pure hatred. His forearms moved constantly, tapping the table with sharp claws that made scratching sounds on the metal surface. To her left was the representative of the Hive Confederation. The creature looked like a giant ant standing on 2 legs. Its head moved side to side as it watched her. Behind its black eyes, Kate could see cold intelligence that cared nothing for human life. On her right sat the delegate from the crystalline, Hegemony. This one was the worst of all. It looked like a walking pile of sharp rocks that had learned to hate. When it spoke, its voice sounded like glass breaking. Kate had been coming to these meetings for 3 years. 3 long years of trying to make peace with aliens who saw humans as nothing more than annoying children. Every meeting was the same. The aliens would make demands. Kate would try to find middle ground. The aliens would laugh at her efforts. Behind Kate, Captain John Hayes stood near the wall. He wore his Earth Defense Fleet uniform with pride. even though the aliens often joked about how weak Earth's military was. John had been watching these meetings for months now. He could see the anger building in Kate's eyes. "So," Admiral Vexthul said, his voice making clicking sounds, "have you humans decided to be reasonable yet? Will you give us the Kepler colonies like we asked?" Kate kept her voice steady. "The Kepler colonies are home to 3 million humans. We cannot simply abandon them because you want the planets." The crystalline delegate made a sound like breaking glass. "Your species is young and stupid. You do not understand how things work in this galaxy. The strong take what they want. The weak give up what they cannot keep." "We are not weak," Kate said quietly. This made all three aliens laugh. The sound filled the room and made John's hands form fists behind his back. "Not weak," the Hive representative said in its buzzing voice. "Your entire military has maybe 200 ships. My people have thousands. The Zephyrians have tens of thousands." Admiral Vexthul leaned forward. "Perhaps we should remind you humans of your place. Maybe a few dead colonies would help you think more clearly." Kate felt something cold grow in her chest. "Are you threatening human civilians?" "I am stating facts," Vexthul replied. "Last month we had to conduct some cleaning operations near your mining stations in the Outer Rim. Some humans got in the way. These things happen in space. Very dangerous place space is." John stepped forward, but Kate held up one hand to stop. Him. She knew exactly what Vexthul meant. 3 weeks ago, Zephyrian ships had attacked human mining platforms. 400 miners had died. Men, women, and children who had been doing nothing but trying to make a living in the cold dark of space. "You murdered 400 innocent people," Kate said. "Accidents happen," the crystalline delegate said with its glass-breaking laugh. "Perhaps if humans stayed in their own small corner of space, such accidents would not occur." Kate stood up slowly. The room went quiet. For 3 years, she had sat at this table and taken every insult, every threat, every cruel joke about her species. She had smiled and nodded and tried to find ways to make peace with beings who saw humans as nothing more than insects to be stepped on. "Gentlemen," she said in a voice so quiet that everyone had to lean forward to hear her, "I believe these negotiations are finished." She turned to walk toward the door. Behind her, she could hear Vexthul's mandibles clicking with amusement. Running. "Away, little human. How typical of your cowardly race. No wonder you hide behind words instead of fighting like real warriors." Kate stopped walking. She stood at the doorway for a long moment, her back still turned to the aliens. John could see her shoulders shaking, but not with fear, with pure rage. When she finally spoke, her voice carried across the room like a cold wind. "Admiral Vexthul, you have just made the biggest mistake in the history of your empire. Good day." She walked out without looking back. John followed her, but not before giving the 3 aliens a look that promised future pain. In the hallway outside, Kate walked quickly toward the human quarters. Her hands were shaking now, and John could see tears in her eyes. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of fury. "Ma'am," John said carefully, "what are your orders?" Kate stopped walking and turned to face him. In her eyes, John saw something he had never seen before. It was the look of a human being who had finally been pushed too far. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Tell them the peace talks have failed. Tell them the aliens want war." John nodded. "And then, ma'am?" Kate looked back at the meeting room door. Inside, she could still hear the aliens laughing about stupid, weak humans who would never fight back. "Then we show them what happens when you threaten human families," she said. 2 hours later, Kate stood in her private office aboard the Earth diplomatic ship. On the screen in front of her was President Helen White, leader of the United Earth government. "Kate," the president said, "I just got your report. Are you certain there is no way to make peace?" Kate thought about the 400 miners who had died. She thought about the alien laughter when they talked about murdering human civilians. She thought about 3 years of being treated like a child begging for scraps at the adult table. "Madam." "President," she said, "they killed our people and laughed about it. They threaten to kill more if we do not give them everything they want. There can be no peace with creatures like this." President White was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Very well," she said. "Kate, I want you to return to Earth immediately. We have some preparations to make." "What kind of preparations, Madam President?" President White smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator showing its teeth. The kind that will remind this galaxy why humans survived the Ice Age, conquered their own world, and reached for the stars despite every obstacle in their path. As Kate's ship left Nexus Prime Station, she looked back at the massive structure through her window. Inside that station, alien diplomats were probably celebrating their victory over the weak humans who had run away from the negotiating table. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. For 3 years, humanity had tried to find its place in the galaxy through words and compromise. That time was over. Now it was time to find their place through fire and steel.